Soon, the couple was seated right next to us. "Is your place fine after this?" "Yeah, I guess that works." The man chuckled and took off his sunglasses. At that moment, my best friend Michelle leaned over and whispered to me, "Isn't that guy your husband?" "What?" I instinctively looked up at the man sitting next to us. Our eyes met. "It's Timothy, my husband." Just as I realized, he quickly averted his gaze. At the same time, beads of sweat began forming on his forehead. I already knew he was cheating. But running into him like this, I never expected that. Still, this must be a sign from the heavens, a golden opportunity. In this situation, there's no way he can make excuses. This is it. Now's the time to confront him about his affair. I wonder what kind of lies Timothy will try to spin. Well, no matter what, the woman he's cheating with is right here in front of me, and she's already slipped up and let it out. The stage is set. Now, all that's left is to serve him his due punishment, as perfectly cooked as the dishes in this restaurant. He betrayed me, so he deserves what's coming. All right then, let my counterattack begin. I quietly reached into my bag. My name is Amanda. I'm 33 years old, and as usual, I've been busy taking care of household chores today. Why am I so busy? It's because I've been working part-time as an online tutor. By the way, my husband Timothy doesn't know about my tutoring job. It's not that I don't want to tell him. It's just that Timothy never listens to me. When I brought up the idea of doing a part-time job in the past, he dismissed it, saying, "You're too shy, it'll never work." Couldn't he believe in me just a little more? I believed in Timothy when I decided to marry him, but maybe that was a mistake. When we were dating, Timothy used to listen to me all the time. I first met Timothy in college, in the mystery novel club. Being shy, I had no intention of joining any club, but when a classmate invited me, I couldn't refuse. That's how I ended up going to the club meetings. Of course, being shy, I couldn't talk to the other club members easily at first. While I was sitting quietly by myself, Timothy, who was my senior, came over and spoke to me. "There's no need to rush. Just talk at your own pace." In a room where no one really paid any attention to me, Timothy was the only one who cared. It was his kindness that drew me to him, and before I knew it, I found myself able to speak freely with Timothy. Eventually, we started dating, and even the other club members acknowledged our relationship. Thanks to Timothy, I had an enjoyable college life, but that happy time was about to come to an end. Timothy's graduation was approaching. It wasn't that we were going to break up or anything, but once Timothy graduated, it would be hard for us to keep seeing each other as we had been. That thought made me feel down. Noticing my mood, Timothy said, "Amanda, how about we get married after you graduate?" "What? Are you serious?" "Of course I am, but it might be a bit tough." Timothy expressed his concerns. The reason lay in his current job hunt. While actively seeking jobs, Timothy had also been developing software with some of his classmates. The project was starting to gain traction, and his friends were even discussing starting their own company. It wasn't a bad idea by any means, but there was an undeniable risk of failure. Timothy told me all of this openly. I couldn't say I wholeheartedly agreed with the plan. Still, I wanted to support him. So I answered, "Why not go for it, Timothy? There's no point in worrying about what happens if you haven't even tried, right?" "You're right." "All right, I'm doing it." And so, Timothy decided not to pursue a traditional job, and instead launched an IT company with his friends. There were some ups and downs, but the company steadily grew. As time went on, my graduation date drew near. One day, Timothy suddenly said he wanted to see me. Not only that, but he had booked a reservation at a fancy restaurant. Could this be an early graduation celebration? With my heart racing, I hurried to the meeting place. But there, Timothy said something I wasn't expecting at all. "Amanda, you don't need to get a job." "What? Why not?" was Timothy asking me to work at his company. As I was pondering this, he replied, "Someone as shy as you working in a company? That's absolutely impossible." Well, I am shy, but I couldn't completely deny it. But I had experience working part-time as a tutor, and lately, I felt like I wasn't as uncomfortable talking to people as I used to be. I carefully explained this to Timothy, but all he did was sigh. "Look, the real world isn't that simple. You'd fail for sure. But I'm saying this for your own good, Amanda. And after you graduate, you're going to marry me, right?" Timothy pressed me for confirmation. I nodded quietly. "Then you need to focus on being a good housewife and supporting me." Okay, my salary isn't much right now, but someday I'll make you a proud CEO's wife. Deal?" Maybe Timothy was right. Even though it was a venture company, his business was stable. It made sense that our lives would be more secure if I didn't overextend myself and focused on supporting him instead. With that in mind, I decided to follow his advice and chose not to pursue a career. Afterward, I told my parents about my decision not to work and my desire to get married. Incidentally, Timothy had met my parents shortly after we started dating, when he founded his company. And on many other occasions, Timothy would keep in close communication with them. I think this was his way of showing my parents how serious he was about our relationship. Thanks to his efforts, my parents didn't raise any objections. And so I got married right after graduating. Even after we were married, Timothy didn't change at all from how he'd been while we were dating. That's not to say things were perfect. In fact, life was quite challenging in the beginning. Sure, being the CEO of an IT company sounds impressive, but in reality, it was just a small business. No, calling it a micro-enterprise might be more accurate because of its size. Even the CEO had to work like any regular employee. And since the company's revenue was still in a growth phase, it wasn't anywhere near as large as that of a typical corporation. In short, even though Timothy was the CEO, his job kept him busy, and his salary wasn't much. "Sorry, Amanda, my paycheck isn't great again this month." "It's fine, Timothy. It's not much different from what an entry-level employee at a regular company would earn." In reality, Timothy's salary was lower than that of a new hire at a large corporation. However, as long as we didn't live extravagantly, we wouldn't be in dire straits. There was just one problem. We were newlyweds. Living together as a couple was naturally more expensive than living alone. Our grocery bills went up, as did our utility expenses for electricity, gas, and water. On top of that, we had to buy household essentials. And no matter how much money we had, it never seemed to be enough. For now, we'll have to rely on my parents a bit. I knew it felt wrong to turn to my parents for financial help after choosing to be a housewife. But I convinced myself that if we could just get through this tough period, our future would be bright. After all, relying on my parents was something I could only do as a newlywed. Once we had been married for years, it would be too embarrassing to ask for their help. With that in mind, I swallowed my pride and relied on them. Still, it wasn't all bad. The more we struggled, the more I appreciated the little moments of happiness. Timothy's occasional displays of kindness were one such thing. "Amanda, I'm really sorry for all the hardship. I brought you a little something today." Timothy pulled out a grocery store bag he had been hiding behind his back. Inside were 2 new desserts that had just hit the shelves. "Wait, Aren't these the desserts everyone's talking about on social media? Yeah, I thought we could share them together. Thank you, Timothy. Some might find this sort of thing trivial, but I found contentment in our modest life. However, no matter how much I supported Timothy, there was no sign of his salary increasing. While the business seemed to be doing well, he said there were still many expenses to cover. Hiring new employees and investing in the latest equipment ate up most of the company's profits. No matter how much money the company made, it was never enough. Just a little longer. We're so close to getting everything in place at the office. I know. I'll find a way to make things work. This conversation happened 5 years into our marriage. By then, the savings I had built up from my part-time tutoring before graduation were completely gone, and the thought of relying on my parents any further made me feel uneasy. After much thought, I finally decided to take the plunge and start working. Timothy, I've decided to take on a part-time job. What? Where's this coming from all of a sudden? Well, our financial situation has become tough, and I feel bad not contributing at all. Since I didn't have any professional work experience, getting a full-time job right away seemed unrealistic, but I thought a part-time position might be something I could handle. Timothy, however, frowned and said firmly, "You can't do that." I couldn't respond. His words left me speechless. Then Timothy quickly tried to soften his statement. "I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just that you're shy, and..." As he rattled off excuses, I couldn't process anything he was saying. I think I felt as though he had branded me as incompetent, which was a blow to my confidence. Before I knew it, Timothy was wrapping up the conversation in his usual way. "Look, I'll just take on more work. You just focus on the housework, Amanda." I couldn't argue with him. After that, Timothy did start working more. He began working on holidays and weekends, sometimes even taking overnight assignments. His return times grew later and later, and there were nights when he wouldn't come home until after midnight. But the increase in his paycheck was minimal. Still, I felt deeply touched by Timothy's efforts. If Timothy was trying so hard for my sake, then I had to do something for him, too. What can I do? I wondered. That's when it hit me. I could use my past experience as a tutor. Sure, the first thing that comes to mind for a housewife might be part-time work at a supermarket or grocery store. But such jobs often involve fixed shifts, and it's not always possible to work at convenient times. If Timothy found out I was working, it might worry him unnecessarily. I wanted him to focus solely on his company without any distractions. So I chose to become an online tutor. It was perfect. I could work from home, finish housework during the day, and start my tutoring sessions in the evening. If I wrapped up the sessions before Timothy came home, he'd never know. And it worked. Even with short hours, the income was decent. If this can make things a little easier for us. And so I quietly continued working as an online tutor, keeping it a secret from Timothy. 5 years passed since I started tutoring. This year marked a milestone, our 10th wedding anniversary. Timothy's salary had increased significantly, but his work remained as demanding as ever. Working on weekends or traveling for business trips was still a regular occurrence. One Sunday, Timothy left for work as usual. Before leaving, he handed me his smartphone and said, "Can you pick up this tie for me? It's for work." On the screen was a photo of an expensive designer tie. I frowned instinctively. Isn't this a bit pricey? Well, I'm the CEO. I need to look the part. He had a point. So I headed to the high-end brand store by myself. That's when I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years. As I left the store, I heard a familiar voice. "Amanda." I turned around to see Donald, Timothy's old classmate from university. Donald had been in the same mystery novel club as us, so I knew him well. Now, he was also helping manage Timothy's company, making him someone I couldn't ignore in more ways than one. Thankfully, Donald was one of the few people I could comfortably talk to. I felt relieved. "Oh, Donald, aren't you working today?" I asked casually. Donald furrowed his brow in confusion. "What? It's my day off. Timothy should be home too." Home. That moment, it hit me. Timothy had lied. Wait, is he out? Donald looked visibly unsettled. At this point, it wasn't hard to connect the dots. Timothy had lied about work and was likely out somewhere, possibly with someone else. As Donald continued talking, his words unraveled even more discrepancies. Apparently, Timothy's salary was much higher than I had been led to believe, more than double what I thought. There were no overnight assignments, and most business trips were handled by his subordinates. In other words, everything Timothy had told me was a lie. I quickly made up an excuse to end a conversation with Donald and rushed home, my heart pounding the entire way. When I checked Timothy's social media, I found several suspicious posts. Most were about work, but one in particular stood out. A post about a gift for his wife. It was a photo of a luxury brand perfume, and the caption claimed he had bought it for me. I don't remember ever receiving anything like this. I clenched my teeth in frustration. Without hesitation, I hired a private investigator to look into Timothy's behavior. "It'll take about 2 weeks to get results," they told me. I was almost certain Timothy was cheating, so I just needed evidence to confirm it. Even so, I knew that once the proof came in, I'd have to summon the strength to face reality. No matter the outcome, I need to be prepared. The days passed slowly, my heart pounding with anxiety. Finally, after 2 weeks, the investigation results arrived. As I read through the report, a lump formed in my throat. It confirmed everything I feared. I immediately reached out to Michelle, my best friend from high school, asking if we could meet. Without hesitation, Michelle agreed to come see me. We met at the train station and headed to a French restaurant in the bustling city center. This place is fancy, but the lunch menu is surprisingly affordable, Michelle said proudly, clearly trying to lift my spirits. I could tell she was making an effort to cheer me up. We entered the restaurant and were seated by the window. After placing our lunch orders, I finally spoke up. "Sorry for calling you out on short notice. Is everything okay at work? I know being a nurse keeps you busy." "Well, it's hectic as always, but today's my day off, so don't worry about it." "More importantly, what's going on? Is it about Timothy?" I nodded silently in response to her question. At that moment, a high-pitched voice rang out from the restaurant entrance. "This place is so popular for lunch. It looks expensive, though. Don't worry, the lunch menu is totally affordable." A lively couple entered the restaurant, their cheerful conversation drawing the attention of other diners. I instinctively averted my eyes, not wanting to intrude. Meanwhile, Michelle glanced over to look at them. The couple was soon seated at the table right next to ours. "So, should we head back to your place after this?" "Yay, that works for me." The man laughed casually, then removed his sunglasses. At that moment, Michelle leaned in and quietly asked me, "Is the guy next to us your husband?" "What?" Instinctively, I looked up and glanced at the table beside us. My eyes locked with the man sitting there. It was Timothy. The instant recognition must have struck him too, because he quickly averted his gaze. Sweat began pouring down his forehead as if someone had turned on a faucet. I already knew he was cheating, but I never expected to run into him like this. Still, This had to be a sign, a chance given to me by fate. There was no way Timothy could talk his way out of this now. This was the perfect opportunity to confront him, here and now. What kind of excuse could he possibly come up with? Regardless, the woman sitting across from him was clearly the other woman. She had already let something slip, making the situation crystal clear. All I had to do was slowly let things unravel, like a well-prepared dish in this restaurant. If Timothy betrayed me, he'd have to face the consequences. Now it was time for my counterattack. Calmly, I reached into my bag. "Well, you're sweating quite a bit. Is something wrong?" I addressed Timothy directly, pulling a handkerchief from my bag and extending it toward him. Luckily, it seemed Michelle's earlier remark hadn't reached the woman sitting with him. She appeared genuinely concerned, just like me, as she looked at Timothy. "Oh no. Are you okay?" "Yay, but," Timothy stammered, trying to say something. The woman, however, seemed more focused on me, politely addressing my concern. "I'm so sorry if my boyfriend caused you any trouble." "Your boyfriend, you say?" I repeated her words, carefully studying Timothy's face. He was practically drowning in sweat now. "Yes, he's, my boyfriend," she said with a bashful laugh. "He's usually such a cool guy, but now he's just really sweaty." "Is that so?" I nodded slowly, my gaze never leaving Timothy. And then it happened. Timothy abruptly collapsed onto the table, burying his face in his arms. The next moment, he started sobbing uncontrollably. Michelle and I exchanged exasperated glances, both stunned into silence as we watched him unravel. Meanwhile, the woman Timothy was with seemed genuinely concerned as he suddenly began crying. "Hey, are you okay, Timothy? What happened?" She skillfully blocked any chance Timothy might have had to claim he was someone else, or come up with an excuse. This situation wasn't going to resolve itself on its own. I feared that in the chaos, Timothy might try to slip away unnoticed. I gave Michelle a quick glance before turning my attention to the woman. "Excuse me, may I ask your name?" Me. "I'm Emily," she answered, looking confused. I smiled and continued. "Emily, actually, my friend over here is a nurse. If he's not feeling well, you should let her check him out." I gestured toward Michelle. Emily's eyes shifted toward Michelle. "A nurse? Really? Well, I can't do a full examination, but I can certainly help with basic first aid." Michelle nodded with a warm smile, and Emily asked her to help. "Okay, let me help you then. Hello. Do you have any pain anywhere?" I raised my voice and leaned closer to Timothy's ear. But Timothy just kept crying. Did he really think this childish act would work? I grew frustrated and shouted right into Timothy's ear. "Are you in pain? I'm the one whose heart is aching because of your affair." In that instant, Emily's face froze. Timothy, still bent over the table, flinched. "An affair? What are you talking about?" "Oh, just a little matter on our side." "Could it be that you were in the middle of an affair, perhaps?" I stared at Emily intently. She sneered, trying to deflect the conversation. "What's that supposed to mean?" "We're just on a date." "I see. My apologies then. Listen, I'm the real girlfriend, and this man's wife is just a housekeeper." For some reason, Emily slammed her hand on the table in frustration. The server, who had been watching, hurriedly approached. "I'm really sorry for the disturbance. We'll finish this up right away," I said, clearly looking upset. The server nodded quickly in response. I turned back to Emily and spoke to her sharply. "By the way you're speaking, it sounds like you're admitting to the affair. Is that really okay with you? Are you sure you won't regret this?" It's none of your business. That's what she says. "Timothy, I slammed my hand on the table. Timothy flinched. Wait. Timothy, you're... Emily's face went pale all of a sudden. It seemed like she realized something. I gave Emily a sly smile and leaned in to look at Timothy's face, which was still buried in his arms. Hey, Timothy. How about you raise your head now? Aren't you going to pay attention to your very, very important mistress? Oh, no, this is not what it looks like. I can't hear you when you mumble like that. I placed my hand on Timothy's shoulder, and at that, Timothy jumped up like a startled cat. I tightly grabbed his tie. Then I asked him in a low voice, "This tie, wasn't it for work?" "No, I really was working today." "Work? You call a stylish lunch with a woman work?" I tightened my grip on the tie. At that, Timothy started crying again. "It's not like that. There's nothing between us. Nothing between you guys, huh? Anything else you want to say?" I looked over at Emily, who was obviously pouting in dissatisfaction. "I told you I'm the main one." "And who is this woman?" "This is..." Timothy's voice was barely audible. I stared at his face intently. "Why don't you say it clearly?" "This is just my housekeeper." "Huh? This is your housekeeper?" Emily's face twisted in anger, but I just smiled at her. The words she had used to belittle me were now turned back on her, and I was sure that Emily had realized what was going on. She now understood that she was sitting in front of the wife of her cheating partner. "Excuse me, but could you be quiet for a moment?" I said to Emily, and she silently looked down. I nodded, then turned my attention back to Timothy. "Now shall we continue? It's a weekday, so what about work? How is that going?" "My subordinates are handling it." "Oh, wasn't it that you're always so busy?" Timothy trembled at my words. He looked like a little puppy. "Well, normally I'm busy. Today, you had time to cheat, though." When I asked that, he fell silent. I sighed and continued. "How long has this affair been going on?" "It's not an affair." At this point, Timothy was still denying it. I was left speechless. "It's not an affair." "Then what is it?" "It's work." Such an excuse was not going to work. The fact was that Emily had already admitted it was an affair. Timothy probably didn't think her words would count as evidence of an affair. Of course, if things kept going the way they were, it would turn into a he said, she said situation. But I knew that wouldn't be the case. So I asked Timothy. "Her name was Emily, wasn't it? So you're telling me this isn't an affair with her?" "Yay, it's not an affair. She's just a work contact." "But didn't she say she was having an affair?" Timothy looked away, his gaze drifting elsewhere as he responded. "What are you talking about? There's no proof." "There is." Timothy looked stunned. I smiled and reached behind me. "Here, a voice recorder. It's still recording." Michelle placed the voice recorder into my hand. I held it up in front of Timothy. "So that's how it is. As for the proof, I can let you listen to it any time." At my words, Timothy collapsed to the floor. If this were a movie or a drama, the end credits would roll right now. But my revenge story wasn't over yet. I hadn't pulled out that yet. "From the way you're crawling on the floor, I guess you're admitting to the affair." I admit it. "So, can we just stop now? Don't embarrass me any further in a place like this," Timothy begged. I smiled and responded, "No, it's not okay. I still have things I want to ask you." "What?" Timothy looked confused. Meanwhile, I returned a voice recorder to Michelle. Then I took a set of documents out of my bag and slammed them onto the table. "These are the results of your background check." "A background check?" "Yes, and according to this, that Emily. She's just your plaything, right?" I looked at Emily. At that moment, Emily's face turned pale. "Wait, what's going on here?" Emily snapped at me. It was understandable. She had probably thought she was the most important person in Timothy's life until now, but that wasn't the case. A man who cheats on his partner can easily change who his number one is. In fact, Timothy had another mistress. This was something the background check had revealed. Of course, if he was cheating with multiple people, there was no way anyone could forgive him. Naturally, I couldn't forgive him either. That's when I made the decision to divorce him. By the way, today, I had called my best friend Michelle to consult about what would come after the divorce. After explaining all of this calmly, I turned the page of the background check results. So, your current main mistress is Karen, the company secretary, right? No. Timothy hesitated, struggling for words. Emily pressed him hard. You told me I was your main girl. Was that a lie? If I'm just a housekeeper, then you're just the convenient woman for him. I smirked at Emily. She looked at me with frustration. Enough, I'm suing Timothy. I'm going to demand compensation for being deceived. Good idea. I agree, but I'll be suing you for compensation too. What compensation? Of course. You're the mistress of my husband. It's only natural for me to ask for compensation for his infidelity. I gave Emily a sly smile, and she gritted her teeth in frustration. Anything to say? Nothing? Do whatever you want. Fine, I will. When I get the money from Timothy, I'll use it to pay for your compensation, Emily shouted. At that, Michelle whispered behind me. Yes, we've got the verbal evidence. What's this about? Did you forget? I'm the one handling the recording. Michelle held up the voice recorder. Fuming, Emily tried to grab it. Give that to me. If you try anything, I'll call the police, and maybe a lawyer too. At Michelle's words, Emily hesitated. I secretly smiled wickedly to myself. Of course, Michelle's remark probably wasn't meant to have any deeper meaning. It was most likely just a way to calm Emily down and prevent the situation from escalating. But for me, it had a much more significant purpose. I silently thanked Michelle and turned to soothe Emily. Making a scene will only make things worse for you. It would be better if you calmed down. Why do you conveniently have a voice recorder, anyway? Emily shot me a suspicious look, thinking I had planned everything. But that was a huge misunderstanding. As I had mentioned before, Michelle was a nurse. She always considered the possibility of needing to help people when the time came. Of course, if the person is helped, it would be fine. But what if it didn't? What would happen if Michelle, who was supposed to help, was blamed instead? Some people might choose not to help at all, thinking they would be criticized afterward. But Michelle didn't think that way. To protect herself and prove her actions, she carries a voice recorder to document what she does. That's all there was to it, and there were no ulterior motives. I explained this to Emily. What's with you, acting all high and mighty, pretending to be a good person? I won't deny it. I'm a better person than the woman who steals another woman's husband. What did you say? Emily scowled. I stepped between Emily and Michelle. All right, that's enough. For now, you should do whatever you want. That would be more convenient for me anyway. If Emily went to court, Timothy would be cornered. Even if she didn't win the lawsuit, it would still damage Timothy significantly. If I added in my divorce and a claim for compensation, Timothy would suffer a lot. That would definitely hit him hard. As I thought this, I turned back to Timothy. Are you finally ready to apologize? When I asked, Timothy was looking down. I thought he might be crying again, but something felt different this time. I leaned in to look at his face. Suddenly, Timothy started laughing. Ahava, you've really grown, Amanda. You used to be so shy, and now you can talk so easily in front of so many people. Timothy stood up, laughing. Then he continued, acting like a stage actor. My crying act had no effect. You didn't flinch or get scared. I'm really impressed. What are you trying to say? Huh, it's simple. You want to divorce me, right? Fine, I'll let you go, Timothy said arrogantly. And I was annoyed. You think you can talk like that? Yay. Can you live on your own without me? Timothy grinned smugly. I replied calmly, of course. I've already made plans for that. Really? You've never even worked in society before. You think you can survive on your own? Timothy asked, his grin growing wider. I quickly looked away. I couldn't deny that there was some uncertainty, but I knew I didn't want to continue living with Timothy. I didn't want to stay in a marriage where he could do whatever he wanted and cheat without consequences. I didn't want that life anymore. I'm fine. I'll manage somehow. Really? I'll forgive you if you apologize. If you do, I'll stay with you. What will you do? Of course, the answer was already decided, but I couldn't put it into words. I gripped the papers on the table tightly. If I gave up now, it would be the end. Someone once said that, but I won't give up. I want to divorce Timothy and take a new step forward. I ripped a part of the paper I was holding. I handed it to Michelle behind me. Michelle, contact them, I whispered in a voice only Michelle could hear. I didn't need to say anything else. Michelle, who had been my best friend for years, would understand exactly what I meant with just this. In the past, I believed Timothy's words. That's why I didn't get a job and married him, just as he suggested. But not anymore. I don't need to believe Timothy. The one I trust is my best friend, Michelle. Taking a deep breath, I raised my face boldly. Why should I apologize? I haven't done anything wrong. Are you sure about that? You won't regret it. You can't work outside, can you? Well, I made sure that would happen. What's wrong? Didn't you realize? Let me explain it to you. You see, Timothy began speaking confidently. The story goes back to when I was in university. Back then, I was incredibly shy. I could barely talk to anyone. So even when my classmates told me to join a club, I couldn't even refuse. Timothy, who was a senior in the club, of course, noticed. And so, Timothy deliberately approached me first. But there was a purpose behind it. His plan was to control me. Pretending to be kind, Timothy succeeded in making me think I could talk to him easily. However, he didn't create an environment where I could interact with other club members. Simply put, he isolated me. I hadn't realized it back then. In the end, I ended up dating Timothy, but my relationships with others remained weak. There were only a few people I could actually talk to. I had become Timothy's puppet. I didn't get a job, as Timothy said. And right after graduation, I married him. In other words, Timothy's goal was to prevent me from building relationships with others. Even if things improve a little, eventually, your flaws will show. So what? If you make a mistake, you might suddenly get scared and shut yourself in, Timothy said, as if threatening me. I could feel my heart racing like a rapid drumbeat. So what will you do? Are you really going to divorce me? Timothy pressed for an answer. I clenched my hands tightly and looked down. At that moment, a man entered the shop. All eyes, which had been focused on us, were suddenly diverted. I'm Andrew, a lawyer. May I ask where Amanda is? The man who introduced himself as Andrew asked the server. The server pointed to me. It's you. Just as he was about to say something, Andrew fell silent. He had noticed Emily, who was hiding her face. Could it be Emily? Andrew. What a coincidence. What are you doing here? Andrew asked Emily. I steadied my breath and spoke. I'm sorry for calling you here. Actually, This woman and my husband have been having an affair. I pointed at Emily. At that moment, Emily's eyes widened. Stop it, Emily. Will you please be quiet? No, it's not true. This woman is lying. Emily pointed at me. I handed the documents from the table to Andrew. This is the proof of the affair. And this man is my husband. Stop saying such things. Emily tried to snatch the documents away. At that moment, Andrew raised his voice. Emily, did you cheat again? No, it's a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? Didn't I tell you there won't be a next time? As Andrew said that, a voice of surprise came from the shop. What? In fact, Emily had a boyfriend aside from Timothy. That boyfriend was Andrew. Andrew was a skilled lawyer with a promising future. Emily must have seen him as someone ideal. So why had Emily been cheating with Timothy? The answer is simple. Emily had been using Timothy to kill time. While Andrew was a great lawyer and a perfect match for marriage, his busy work life left Emily bored. So she turned to Timothy. That's why Emily had no intention of marrying Timothy. However, it irritated her that she wasn't the most important woman. So Emily claimed she was the most important. So you found out about the other affair. And that made you angry, right? I don't know. To Emily, Timothy was just someone to pass the time with. So when things got complicated between us, Emily never insisted she would marry Timothy. I'm really sorry that Emily caused all this trouble. Andrew apologized, but I shook my head. No, it's fine. I'll divorce my husband. Please help me with the divorce process. I understand. We'll also claim damages. Of course, from the affair partner as well. Andrew looked at Emily with a stern gaze. Emily, on the other hand, started to panic and tried to explain herself. Wait, Andrew, you're my boyfriend. Aren't you going to help me? Of course not. You're responsible for what you did. Rejected by Andrew, Emily stood frozen, stunned. When I looked at Timothy, he was crying again. But this time, it wasn't an act. It seemed like the comment about him being a time passer had struck him deeply. Well then, shall we move to another place? I think we've caused enough trouble for the restaurant, Michelle said, trying to wrap things up. I finally snapped back to reality. It goes without saying that we apologized to the staff and quickly left the restaurant. After leaving the shop, we moved directly to Andrew's law office. There, I told Timothy that I was going to divorce him and demanded compensation. Timothy cried, and progress was slow, but thanks to Andrew, he finally agreed to the divorce. Of course, he also agreed to pay the compensation, and we officially divorced. Additionally, Emily reluctantly agreed to pay the compensation as well, making for a satisfactory discussion. While I was at it, I also filed for compensation from Timothy's company's CEO secretary. The next day, for some reason, the full amount of the compensation was transferred. It seemed that the affair had spread to the company, and the secretary resigned and disappeared before it became public. Maybe the secretary had a significant other, too. Otherwise, such a quick response wouldn't be possible. If that's the case, Timothy was treated as a mere pastime by Emily, and as an amusement by the secretary. In the end, he was discarded by me as well, and Timothy ended up a mess. After the divorce, he couldn't focus on his work, and now he's reportedly holed up at his parents' house. Apparently, he's also having issues with Emily, which makes me feel quite relieved. As for Emily, she's struggling too. Naturally, Emily and Andrew broke up. Emily begged for reconciliation, but Andrew ignored her. However, Emily didn't give up, and eventually it led to a police matter. I don't know all the details, but apparently, she was arrested, so I probably won't be seeing her for a while. The only thing I'm worried about is whether she'll be able to pay the compensation. But since Andrew spoke to Emily's parents, I think it will work out. As for me, I'm doing well working as a tutor. It was Donald who introduced me to the job. Donald, who took over Timothy's company, introduced me to the tutoring company he worked with. Well, I guess it's a good thing, right? Your work is going well. Since the divorce, I've been meeting Michelle more often. I think it's because she's concerned about me. While I'm grateful for that, there's one thing that's been bothering me every time I meet Michelle. By the way, do you have a new boyfriend? That's what she always asks. I sighed and responded, I'm not looking for a relationship or marriage for a while. Really? Yes, really. Right now, I'm enjoying my work, and that's the truth. Since the divorce, it's been the first time I've had a job. It's a different kind of fulfillment from when I was an online tutor. If I had to describe it, I'd call it the joy of working. It's that kind of feeling. So for now, I want to focus on my work. I'm really happy to be able to live such a fulfilling life.